Voice of America. I'm Arcega in Washington. Well, as many of our viewers know, the two major presidential candidates have starkly different views on immigration. Donald Trump wants to build a border wall to keep undocumented immigrants out of the country, while Hillary Clinton wants to reform the nation's laws to give an estimated 11 million undocumented immigrants some pathway to citizenship. VOA's Mike Sullivan takes a look at their contrasting positions and the families that would be affected the most.
The United States is a nation of immigrants who play an important role in its economy and add to the cultural mosaic of the country.
You're our neighbors, our colleagues, our friends, our families.
But developments such as the refugee crisis in Europe, the threat of terrorism, and the presence of an estimated 11 million people now living illegally in the U.S. have become major campaign issues.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
Trump later modified his stand about Muslim immigration, but continues to call for building a wall on the southern U.S. border to stop illegal immigration from Mexico. Trump's immigration policy also calls for Mexico to pay for the wall and to end a policy known as catch and release. Anyone who illegally crosses the border will be detained until they are removed from the country, according to Trump's website. Trump also would deport criminal aliens, expand the Border Patrol, and the E-Verify system of workplace enforcement.
So, is a nation of immigrants becoming more anti-immigrant? For answers, we go to our New York studio, where we are joined by VOA Spanish correspondent Celia Mendoza and New York Bureau reporter Ramon Taylor. I thank you both for joining us. I know it's a very busy day for both of you, but I want to hear your perspectives on this issue. So, Celia, I'm going to start with you. We saw this anti-immigrant sentiment sort of building in Europe with the Syrian refugee crisis there, and we saw something very similar happen in Great Britain during the Brexit vote, as you might recall. Is that same anti-immigrant sentiment finding a home here in the United States?
It looks like something that Donald Trump has been able to utilize to mobilize a very important group of the Republican Party. We have seen a group of people that were not motivated to vote, that they were dissatisfied with the traditional Republican Party, and that have been able to express their feelings through the vision of Donald Trump. He started here in New York more than a year ago, talking about immigrants, Mexicans, accusing them of being rapists, to come in with drugs, and that whole rhetoric has established a path through his whole base, and that's something that definitely has found a place, and it has definitely been something that is supported by those that are behind Donald Trump. And we're not talking just about Anglos. We have seen a group of Latinos that have actually aligned with Donald Trump, expressing their feelings about illegal immigration and also about the opportunities for the economy. And that is something that we saw on the Brexit, is that feeling of nationalism and to protection to those that are legally in the United States, to be able to move forward in a country where they feel they're being, in a way, taken over by those that are not legally, and they are taking their jobs and their economy opportunities. Yeah, no, it's a disturbing issue, one that is patently false to begin with, speaking as an immigrant. Now, Ramon, Latino voters have been, mostly invisible in past elections, but that hasn't been the case in 2016. In fact, Latinos have become a very crucial voting bloc. Do we have Donald Trump to thank for that?
Well, like you mentioned, they are an important voting bloc, and they've become a more important voting bloc election after election. So these numbers are continuing to rise. They are not invisible, and they're showing that to be the case, especially now, because many feel that they were personally attacked at the very beginning of this campaign season when Donald Trump made immigration a central campaign issue, even before Hillary Clinton could jump on the offensive on comprehensive immigration reform. So while you do have some in that camp that Celia mentioned that do feel to be on the defensive, that they got here legally and they want others to do the same, there's a vast majority of Latinos that are important to this election that feel completely the opposite, and that's why Hillary Clinton still has a huge margin of a lead over Donald Trump.
So, Ramon, how do you explain the rising rates of support for Donald Trump among Latino Americans?
Well, I think it's just like you would see with other groups, whether that's diaspora groups from Africa, Asia, elsewhere. As this election comes down to a close, to its final few days, it really comes down to character issues, as Jim Malone explained to us earlier, who they feel they can trust. And with Clinton in the spotlight recently, it comes down to really a gut feeling for a lot of people on election day. So while Clinton still considers Latino voters to be somewhat of a firewall of a voting bloc this election season, there are still roughly 8% of voters nationwide who are undecided, and that could be the margin that makes up a difference in an election that is this close, including among Latino voters.
Celia, let me talk to you now about the economic worries about a Trump presidency. You know, every time Donald Trump gets a bump in the polls, we see the Mexico peso actually dropping. What is it that scares Mexicans and Latinos about a Donald Trump presidency?
Well, it's something very scary for Latin Americans to see a Donald Trump presidency, especially because of what he has said about the economic relationships and what he will do in terms of the agreements that is already in place with Mexico, with China, with Canada. He says that we will be out of the TPP, and that's something that Hillary Clinton also wants to do. Now, the terms of those relationships and how he wants to do it could be crucial and devastating for the relationship between the two countries. He's asking to implement different fees for the products coming into the United States, talking about a 35% increase. And that's something that will be terrible for those countries and their relationship with the United States. But also he's talking about deporting millions and millions of people. That also means for Latin Americans, the main income coming from the United States, which is all the money that they send to their home countries, will be completely banished. So it will be terrible for Latin America if we see a presidency of Donald Trump. That's what is very scary, and they're following it very, very close. Now, his rhetoric towards Latinos in the United States is that he's the only solution. However, we see that the polls are showing that 7 of 10 Latinos actually support Hillary Clinton. That's according to the latest Pew Research data information.
Right.
And that shows us a little bit of what is happening.
Ramon, to be fair, the Hillary Clinton presidency would essentially follow through on President Obama's immigration policies, which has been probably, as some have critically called them, the deporter-in-chief. Now, how does Hillary Clinton's immigration platform differ from Donald Trump's?
Well, it's starkly different on paper, and that's what it's going to come down to, is do they trust that she's going to follow through on her actions? Certainly, she's not calling for mass deportation. She's calling for a comprehensive immigration plan, which means a path to citizenship, but it's a very rigorous plan. Let's not forget that. So ultimately, there's not going to be a blank check on this. Latinos feel, again, by those margins that Celia just mentioned, 7 in 10, that she's the better candidate of the two on this issue, and it's going to come down to whether she follows through, especially in the first 4 years of her presidency, because if she were to be elected again, right. Because if she does not follow through, then they're not going to write her a blank check for a re-election.
She definitely needs the help of the Latino community, and we shall find out how effective the Hispanic community has been in supporting Hillary Clinton. My thanks, of course, to VOA Spanish reporter Celia Mendoza and VOA correspondent Ramon Taylor in New York. Thanks, guys. Still to come on this election edition of The Correspondents, how a Clinton or Trump presidency could affect U.S. foreign policy. And by the way, if you'd like to share your thoughts, questions, or comments about our show, check out our Facebook page. The address is VOA The Correspondents. We'll be right back.